Namaskar. We're very fortunate today to have with us a very accomplished parliamentarian, a person with a very strong political pedigree and somebody who has held key positions in the government. He's been in the Ministry of Finance, Civil Aviation, and is personally credited with some game-changing legislations, like you have the bankruptcy code, you have the Udan connectivity scheme. So we're very fortunate to have with us Mr. Jayant Sinha, and thank you so much, sir, for coming. By the way, you also happen to be a member of the Governing Council of India Foundation, so thank you so much for being with us today. And in the next half an hour, we'll be discussing emerging Bharat and Modi government over the last 10 years. So to begin with, sir, do you see this new India as a Modi miracle of something which was already in the, it was bound to happen. There were various factors, there was a groundwork to it, and Modi was just, that face that India needed. So how do you see this whole thing panning out?
Thank you very much, Ayushi ji, and wonderful once again to be at the India Foundation and to participate in what I think is going to be a fascinating discussion of the last 10 years, the last decade under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. And you have asked exactly, Ayushi ji, the right question, which is, in the last decade, how has India been transformed? And of course, we can get into a lot of detail, but let me summarize it by saying that in the last decade, India has gone from being a weak country, unsure of its future, to now being a very strong, rising superpower, very confident about the direction that we are marching in, and we are headed towards being Viksit Bharat. So this is the incredible transformation that has happened in the last decade.
So you are a very strong finance person. You have a very strong finance background. There's always been this interplay of economics and politics. I think perhaps the economic part is even more important because we are a young nation and we talk of demographic dividend. So here in this demographic dividend, where do you see this entire idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat, Make in India, and this very strong startup ecosystem? How do you see this as being a game changer?
So Ayushi ji, a lot of us are great followers and believers in what Kautilya has taught us. And if you remember, his magnum opus is called the Arthashastra, right? So what he says is that to have a strong state, to have a strong country, the foundation for that is the Arthavivastha, that is the economics. And that is precisely what the Honorable Prime Minister has done over the last decade. We've gone from a situation when we came into power in 2014, India was counted amongst the fragile five. Five very fragile countries whose macroeconomic parameters were very unstable, and it wasn't clear that we could pursue stable, robust growth going forward. Now, we are in the top 5 economies of the world and headed to being in the top 3, and the Honorable Prime Minister has given us his guarantee that we will be there, and of course we will be there within a few years. So we've gone from being a fragile 5 country to being a top 3 economy, and that is an extraordinary transformation, and that is the bedrock for the strength that India possesses and the esteem and the reputation that India possesses, this extraordinary economic transformation. Now that is obviously important. Being a young nation, as you pointed out, we have to get people good jobs, etc. But let me emphasize, the 5 things, just at a very high level, that has been accomplished over the last decade as far as the economy is concerned. The number one thing that we have been able to do as far as the economy is concerned is macroeconomic stability. So in 2013, we had a mini balance of payments crisis. The rupee plunged by 14–15%. There was a real concern about whether India could manage its macroeconomy. But over the last 10 years, despite a number of different sort of macroeconomic shocks, obviously COVID is the biggest one of them, but then we've also had the war in Ukraine. we've had the breaking down of global supply chains. Despite these crises, we have maintained macroeconomic stability. We are growing at 7-8% a year. Inflation is at 4%. Our current account deficit is below 1%. Investments are up. So every macroeconomic parameter right now is extremely robust, and the world is looking to India with great hopes and expectations. So macroeconomic stability, number one sort of accomplishment of our government. Number two, we have taken the social security system in India and transformed it. The fact that 80 crore people are getting free food grains, that we can send money into people's bank accounts with no leakage, koi dalali nahi, koi bicholia nahi, that is a tremendous system that we built. The social security system that India has developed is extraordinary. So that's a second great achievement. The third great achievement that we've had as far as the economy is concerned is infrastructure. You of course spoke about Udan, which is what we've done with our airports, but I think the greatest accomplishment in infrastructure is the 34,000 miles, the 50-60,000 kilometers of national highways that have been built. You travel anywhere in India right now, the highway system is extraordinary. The bridges that have been built, Atal Setu, which is connecting Navi Mumbai with Mumbai, is a miracle. So infrastructure build out, the ports, the highways, the airports, all of that has been done in an extraordinary way. So that's a third major accomplishment. Fourth major accomplishment is GST and the formalization. GST and the formalization of the Indian economy. Today tax rates are very low. They are lower in some cases in GST than they were during the indirect tax regime of the past, when we had 37 different taxes, indirect taxes. However, the indirect tax collection as a percent of GDP has gone up by 2 percentage points, which is dramatic, which is huge. And that's because formalization and GST have worked so well. And then the final point I will make, and which is of course the real reason why we have so much hope for the future, is the innovation and the startup ecosystem that has flourished in India. So there, when we used to have hundreds of startups, now we have 1 lakh startups. And we have a huge domestic venture capital ecosystem. We have 115 unicorns that have been created. And this is the rejuvenation of India's capitalism, the rejuvenation of India's economy that our young entrepreneurs are doing. So these are 5 signature accomplishments. Of course, there's lots of detail that we can discuss underneath all of that. But if you were to step back and say in 10 years, as we've gone from being a fragile 5 economy to being a top 3 economy, what are the 5 big things that really have driven this? And these are the 5 I would highlight.
Thank you, sir. That brings me to the next question, which is invariably the role of youth and women in this entire growth story of India. Because as you very well know, India has the demographic dividend advantage. But to ensure that the demographic dividend actually pays out, I think we have to be extremely cautious and concerned, because we have more than 50% of the population.
You're absolutely right, Ayushi ji. And also please consider the global environment, right? The global environment is one in which we are looking at deglobalization, not globalization, deglobalization, because supply chains are fracturing. Right? So when we had global supply chains, it was easy to get plugged into sort of the global export economy and be able to export, which is effectively what China did, which China now accounts for 30-40% of the world's manufacturing. That is harder to do when supply chains are breaking down. So that's one aspect of the global economy we have to consider. Another aspect of the global economy that we have to consider right now is decarbonization. So everybody wants to go towards net zero because of climate change and so on. And that means that it's harder for us to create jobs, to grow the economy, because we not only have to grow, we also have to decarbonize. So that's a second challenge that we have to deal with right now. So deglobalization is happening and decarbonization is happening. And then there is a third major trend that's happening globally, which is digitization and artificial intelligence, right? That also is making it difficult to create jobs. So this is the global environment that we're dealing with. And in this global environment, there is a crisis of jobs, not just in India, but around the world. All that being said, India, of course, has done a super job in creating work for our young people and increasingly starting to bring women into the labor force as well. So if you look at the EPFO data, which is the best indicator of the creation of high quality jobs, you'll find that we are creating every year high quality 2 to 3 million jobs. And this is the new people who are joining EPFO that are younger people. So I'm not talking about 50-year-old people that are becoming part of EPFO, but people under the age of 25 that are becoming part of EPFO. That data is very robust. It's indicating that young people are getting into the formal workforce, that they are getting provident fund, they are getting benefits, etc. So those numbers are very, very promising. And of course, our higher education system under the National Education Policy is being strengthened so that we can skill people for the future. So these jobs are being created. And we also have a huge opportunity, which is to bring women into the workforce. Right now, 20 to 30% of women are actually in the workforce, but most of them are also in informal jobs in agriculture. So to bring women into the formal workforce is something that will enable us to power growth for the next many, many decades as we bring women into the workforce. So you're right, we have extraordinarily positive demographics, which are going to be a huge tailwind for us. But at the same time, we have to ensure our education, our skilling, and our job creation in a world of many, many threats is managed very well. We've done that extremely well over the last decade, so I'm very hopeful we'll be able to manage it going forward also. But these are the complexities that we have to deal with. I'll just conclude this point, Ayushi, by mentioning one very important fact that I think all of us should remember. In 2100, we are going to be a country with 1.6 billion people. That's India. We will be the most populous country in the world. In 2100, our population will be 1.6 billion people. The US will have grown. The US is at about 350 million people, 35 crores. They'll grow by 2100 to 400 million people, that is 40 crores. On the other hand, China, which is 140 crore people, is going to lose population, it's going to depopulate, and it's going to go down to 80 crores. So the working age population and the number of people who are working in China is dramatically going to decline. America will remain relatively flat, India will grow, and that's the power of our demographics.
Right. So with that, do you see this unorganized sector, which again is a very big challenge, because we have people in the unorganized sector, do you see this somewhere being an obstacle, or how do you see this being brought into the organized sector? Because you rightly said the efforts are on in this direction, but might be this is a time consuming task, and we do not want to miss out on the growth trajectory, growth story.
Ayushi, that's again a very good question. Ultimately, as you know very well, for an economy to grow, for GDP per capita to grow, people have to become more productive. That is, for the same inputs, because of the higher skills, because of the higher capabilities that people have, instead of them producing 5 lakhs a year of output, they produce 25 lakhs a year of output. That is increase in individual productivity, and that's what powers the economy. Now, it's very hard to do that in the informal sector, because the way people become more productive is by the use of equipment, by the use of tools, by the use of skills. Now, when you are in the informal sector, you're working in the fields, right? And you don't have pumps, you don't have tractors, you don't have threshers. और you're working in a very small दुकान, आप छोटी सी दुकान में, किराने की दुकान में आप बैठे हुए हैं, आप कितना वहाँ बेच सकते हैं? आप बड़ी सी दुकान में हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा वहाँ लोग आ रहे हैं, बहुत सारे जो चीज़ें हैं वो बिक रही हैं, बड़ी सारी वस्तुएं हैं, तब आपकी प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ जाती है. So to increase productivity, we have to get people out of the informal sector where they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to equipment, they don't have access to skills, and we have to take them from the informal sector to the formal sector, where they have access to all these tools and all of these productivity enhancement equipment. Their productivity goes up, they earn more, which is really what people want to do eventually. आज आप अगर 10,000 रुपए कमा रहे हैं तो हर कोई जो है वो चाहता है मैं 50,000 रुपए कमाऊं, लेकिन 50,000 रुपए कमाने के लिए आपकी प्रोडक्टिविटी तो बढ़नी चाहिए ना, और प्रोडक्टिविटी इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर में कम बढ़ती है. इट्स हार्ड टू डू इट इन द इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर, इट्स मच ईजियर टू डू इट इन द फॉर्मल सेक्टर. सो द ग्रोथ ऑफ एनी इकोनॉमी is frankly driven by people leaving the informal sector, largely agriculture, and coming into the formal sector, whether it is in services or in manufacturing. So that is the transformation, that is the transition we have to undertake. Now the good news, Ayushi ji, is that the Indian economy is gradually becoming much more formalized. The reason why taxes as a percent of GDP have gone up, the reason why GST is being paid by not just by 98 lakh people, there are now 1.4 crore people that are GST registered, right? So 98 lakh before GST, now 1.4 crores after GST. The number of taxpayers has doubled, right? So these are all indications that our formalization is moving along very quickly. We had 6 crore MSMEs. So I've tracked this very closely on the Standing Committee on Finance, which I chair. So we had 6.5 crore MSMEs. We have, through the Udayam portal, registered about 3.5 crores of them. So they now have bank accounts, they have a PAN number, they have a GSTN, and as they do that, they are getting formalized, they are getting access to credit, and they're increasing their productivity. So this formalization of the Indian economy is absolutely crucial, vital to do that. However, because we are a very large economy, it takes time. This transformation is going to take a little bit of time. But the formalization of the Indian economy, inevitably the momentum has swung towards that, and we're moving on it.
Thank you. On that positive note, do you see women, from women empowerment to now women-led development, again being, giving impetus to the entire ecosystem, startup ecosystem, because we see a lot of women entrepreneurs, women politicians, like people at the helm. Otherwise, till now, we have given examples of people like Indra Nooyi, Indian origin people who have done exceedingly well abroad. That also brings me to the next question of how do you see the role of diaspora in this entire thing? Because Modi ji has invariably tapped into the Indian diaspora in various parts of the world, across the globe. So how do you see this, adding to the economic growth, especially the FDI
So Ayushi,
investments?
you've correctly identified two extraordinary reservoirs of strength that we have in India. One, of course, are our women, and of course, as we discussed earlier, only 20-30% are in the workforce right now. So Nari Shakti, right? And of course, we have also in Parliament passed the Nari Shakti Adhiniyam, which is to reserve a third of our seats in our elected assemblies for women. So we've got to bring women into the mainstream. They've got to feel like they are leading, that they're defining India's destiny, and are absolutely empowered to do so. So we are doing that through all of those different mechanisms. And increasingly, as we formalize the economy, we give women the tools, the equipment, the access to credit, they will be entrepreneurs, they will be leaders. And I think that will certainly happen. So that's as far as women are concerned. The diaspora as well, and I am speaking as somebody who used to be part of the diaspora because I spent more than 2 decades living in the United States of America. The diaspora is an extraordinary strength for India. And by some numbers, our diaspora is between 30 to 40 million people. And the purchasing power of the diaspora equals the purchasing power of India as a whole. So it's an extraordinary economic capability that we possess. A lot of the money that comes into India, a lot of the technology, a lot of the knowledge sharing that comes into India comes in through the diaspora. So the more we build the bridges, the more we make it easier for people to be here, to spend some of their time here, the more we are going to benefit from that diaspora, and that is increasingly happening. One of the very good developments has been that as we've strengthened our infrastructure, as the quality of our cities has improved, today whether you're in Delhi or Mumbai or Hyderabad or in Bengaluru, or whether you're in San Francisco or London or New York, for a high-powered professional, it virtually makes no difference. You have the same infrastructure, the same quality of life, the same standards. And that really makes it very, very seamless. And having been in the aviation industry, let me just add one more thing, which is that the privatization of Air India is going to be a fantastic way for us to connect our diaspora. So that when we have direct flights from Mumbai to San Francisco, from Delhi to Tokyo, from Delhi to Atlanta, from Bangalore to Chicago, all of these direct flights that make it very easy for the diaspora and Indians, of course, Desis as well, to be interconnected with all of these global hubs. That really strengthens our economy, strengthens the people-to-people linkages, and connects up India to the world. All these direct connections.
Thank you. Now coming to an area of my interest, which is defense. How do you see, earlier we had this defense versus development debate, either the guns or the butter thing. But now we are definitely going very strongly on defense and development together. So it's going in tandem. So do you see this, the new India, the stronger India, the defense preparedness, modernization, in fact even we've now got into exporting our defense products. Do you see this as adding to our soft power? Because till now we always had the reputation of being a rule abiding country and all of that, the positive things on the soft power front. But do you see this adding a new dimension, the hard power, the increasing hard power adding to, again, how the emerging Bharat or the new Bharat is seen?
Absolutely, Ayushi ji. And again, as I said, I started off by quoting Kautilya about Arthashastra. A strong economy leads to strong national security, which is what we've demonstrated. And of course, not only are we strengthening our defense forces, we are also investing in new technologies, for example, drones, that are making it possible for us to project our power across various different theaters. And because we have the technology, because we have the economic strength, obviously we also have the advanced technologies and we have the money to spend on this. So as our GDP grows, as our resources grow, the 4 to 5% of GDP that we've been spending on defense obviously becomes a bigger and bigger number and makes us stronger and stronger. But I would say, Ayushi ji, that it's not soft power. This is actually a hard power, And I think what we followed is, very much what President Wilson had said, which is speak softly but carry a big stick, right? So speak softly but carry a big stick. And so we are able to, through the efforts of the Honorable Prime Minister, make our voice heard, make it very clear. For example, the intervention around the Ukraine crisis was, this is not the era for war. That was, making it very clear where we stood as far as war is concerned. But because of our rising strength, both in terms of defense as well as in terms of our economy as well as in our trade, we do carry a big stick. We do carry a big stick. So India's voice is heard, and with the Honorable Prime Minister making it very clear on many issues where we stand, that we are going to be independent, we are going to be resilient, we are going to build up our strength and our defense forces, we are able to project our hard power very clearly across the world. I'll just add 2 additional points to this. One is that we have followed a very clear policy of creating defense clusters. So Uttar Pradesh, for instance, is very much becoming a defense cluster where we are strengthening our defense industries so that we can supply ourselves and export as well. So these defense clusters are extraordinarily important. And then the second thing, which I will reiterate, is that we have to really invest in advanced technologies. And there, the work we're doing through the innovation agency that startups are doing is really enabling us to acquire a number of different advanced technologies, whether it's missile and space technology, whether it's drones, whether it's advanced munitions, whether it's aerospace, whether it's artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. In all of these advanced areas, because we are building up our capabilities, our clusters, we are able to project a lot more hard power.
Great. So how do you see, like the Modi factor? Because now we are getting into an election where you actually have the Modi guarantee. So how do you see that, that so-called, that special individual? How do you think the Modi factor has played out both domestically and internationally, globally? How do you think having a visionary leader at the helm has kind of, hastened this process or kind of supported the process of the new India being now recognized by the world at large? And somewhere, probably even the young generation of leaders, which includes you, the way you have projected India at various platforms. So today that factor that we are not Western, non-Western, but not anti-Western, this again is also emerging. So India is now having its own voice, its own say in global matters. So where do you see this leadership and the political, the young generation in politics, creating
well,
this new
Ayushi ji,
India?
I must thank you for calling me young. That sounds delightful for somebody of my advanced age now. So thank you for being so kind there. The best way to think about the extraordinary contribution that the Honorable Prime Minister's leadership has made is to use a Hindi phrase. The Hindi phrase is Yug Purush. Yug Purush. The Honorable Prime Minister is a once in a century figure. He is defining not just India's growth and development, he's also completely repositioning India on the global stage. So he defines the era, Yug Purush. He's a Yug Purush. And his contributions have been so extraordinary across so many domains. I think, for thousands of years we are going to remember this. And I'm thinking back to one of his very important speeches where he said that this is a unique time, and he's a unique person in this regard, in India's history. Because after thousands of years we have a chance to really position India as a global superpower. And that we are a very blessed generation, we are a very blessed country to have a leader like the Honorable Prime Minister who is taking us through this transformation. और भारत माता को एक जहाँ थे हम लोग और उनको दूसरे ही स्तर पे हम लोग ला रहे हैं, एकदम ग्लोबल सुपर पावर बना रहे हैं, विकसित भारत बना रहे हैं. तो हमारे परम आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के योगदान के द्वारा ही ये हो रहा है. Through his extraordinary contributions, we are achieving that. And this is, as I said, it's a unique time for India after thousands of years where we can genuinely become this global superpower. So that is why he's a Yug Purush, because it's an extraordinary inflection that is happening in India's destiny and India's contribution. And there's often a debate among historians, right, which is that is history shaped by forces or by individuals? Right. The great forces theory versus the great leader theory. And I think with the Honorable Prime Minister, it's very, very clear that great leaders are really in some ways able to harness these great forces and really turn it to the advantage of the country. And we're seeing it happening in front of our eyes. Obviously, historians will write about it, scholars like you will study it. But for me, as somebody who has been at the front lines and experienced that transformation, it's been exhilarating.
Thank you, sir. Now coming to the last question, what are the challenges you see to this emerging Bharat? Where do you think, the areas which we should focus on? We've already focused on a lot of key sectors like finance, economy and infrastructure and all of it. But do you see things like education, health, the not so focused areas which would require attention perhaps, coming from the academic background, I see education as again a game changer, a very important game changer. Health also a very important sector that we need to focus. So what are the areas you would say that we need to focus on to maintain that steam, to keep up with the good work that we are already doing? And where do you think Modi 3.0, as we see it coming, what is the trajectory of that going to be? So
Ayushi ji, the way I see it is the first 5 years were about strengthening and stabilizing India. That's 2014 to 19. The last 5 years, Modi 2.0 if you will, have really been about resilience, dealing with COVID, dealing with wars, and really making the Indian economy very resilient. I think the next 5 years, Modi 3.0, is really going to be about global leadership, where we will become a top 3 economy, we will be able to project our hard and soft power around the world, we will be a leading destination for the world's best companies, etc. So really it's going to be about global leadership. And as we strive for global leadership, I'm reminded of a very famous saying by Prime Minister Harold Macmillan of the United Kingdom when he was asked, what is it that you worry about, right? What do you think are the challenges? And he famously said, events, dear boy, events. So if you ask me what is it that I worry about as far as India is concerned, I actually don't worry about our internal challenges. Of course, education, health, these are all important issues. But because of the extraordinary decision making, the ability to implement, the ability to take very, very courageous decisions as far as India is concerned by the Honorable Prime Minister, I have extraordinary confidence that we will overcome anything internally. But it's these events, these external events. Who would have thought that COVID would set us back as much as it did? Who would have thought that the Ukraine war would come in and destabilize the global economy? So it's these events, these global macro shocks that are the ones that are going to be the ones we have to watch out for and manage. Now, the good news is the Honorable Prime Minister and his senior colleagues have been able to manage it and achieve resilience and stability despite all of that. So I have a great deal of confidence that we'll be able to manage it. But it's these events, it's these external challenges that I think are the ones we have to be vigilant about. Internally, whatever needs to happen, we will take the necessary decisions and we will get it done as we've shown over the last 10 years.
Thank you so much. On that positive note, thank you so much for your time and for giving us such a comprehensive picture about the last 10 years and the future, the roadmap for India. Wish you all the very best with your career, both as a politician and as a fine economics person. So we look forward to engaging with you in the future, and thank you so much for your time, sir, once again.
आपको बहुत बहुत नमस्कार.
धन्यवाद. Thank you, sir. Thank you.